Hi everybody, this is Kim. I'm coming in with another episode of The Shy. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, click the thumbs up button. Let's get it started. This episode starts off with Ronnie, and it looks like Ronnie is hurt. Remember the previous episode? If you haven't seen that episode, I'll leave on the cards at the top. I don't know if it's this side or the other side. But on the last episode, Brandon, Kevin, and Ronnie was in the park. And it looked like Brandon was surprised by that. So now this episode starts off with Ronnie looks like he's hurt. Like he's been shot or something. It shows Brandon asked him, "Hey, did you kill my brother?" And Ronnie said, "Yeah." And he was like, Brandon was like, "Now what am I supposed to do about that?" Next thing you know, they just start fighting. Then it switches to Ronnie is hurt. He's holding his side or whatever. He's struggling to get out the park. Continues on and he make his way home and he's just washing his hand. As he's washing his hand, it's just doing like a lot of flashbacks of what actually happened. And then it goes to a part where Kevin and Brandon is in the alley. After the shot, they took off running and now they're in the alley, and Brandon is telling him, you got blood on your shirt, take your shirt off. And he was basically telling him, don't let your mother see you like this. So now Kevin is at Keisha's window trying to get her to let him inside the house so his mother don't see him. So Keisha raised the window up, he goes in and he basically asks for her help. And now Brandon is trying to make it home, and as he's walking, the police stop him, pull him over, and of course he tried to keep walking, and they hop out the car and ask him, where you headed, what gang you run with, and all this old stuff. So the police was getting ready to search him, and he was like, I'm just coming home from work. And he tell the police where he work at, and one of the cops was like, hey, I've been trying to get reservations for there for a while now, and they won't return my call. So Brandon was like, maybe I could help you out. Maybe I could make a call for you. So he ends up making the call for the police and, get him in Saturday at 8 o'clock or whatever. And because he did that favor for the cop, they let him go. So now he's on his way home. Ronnie's grandmother woke up and she's checking her sugar or whatever, and look like she's finna have a good day. So she gets up and she's going into the kitchen and she noticed it's blood on the wall. So she's looking like, what? So as she's turning around, she see Ronnie on the floor in the bathroom. She picked up the phone and she called Jada, her nurse. And she tell Jada, something's wrong with Ronnie. He's been shot. He's been stabbed. Something's going on. He's laying in the floor. I don't know what's going on. You need to get over here right now. After that, it switched to Brandon. And Brandon is in the bed asleep. And his girlfriend comes in and asks him, what have you done? And he like, what? She picks his backpack up, dump it, and she sees the gun. And she start going off and she basically put him out, tell him get out. He tried to explain to her and she ain't having it, she ain't hearing it. She just said, get out. Now it's on Jake. Jake is getting ready for school and his brother Reg stopped him and was like, hey, you getting big, you getting grown now, you becoming a man, and he asked him about his private area or whatever. So he was like, here, come here, let me line you up. He sits him down in a chair and he grabbed him by the back of the head and say, what you doing going in my room, or going through my stuff. And he grabbed him by his dress and he tell him, you better go get my gun, and you better go get my gun now. So Jake leaves the house to go find the gun. Okay, Jada makes it over to Ronnie's grandmother's house and she see him laying on the floor, and his grandmother is like, you gotta save him, and she was like, I can't be associated with nothing like this. And she basically tell Jada, our boys is all we have, you gotta do this, you gotta save them. And Jada just kind of looked And she was like, okay, you know, she look in her bag and say, you know, I'm gonna need more supplies. So she asked her for some of her diapers or whatever. And so she started putting pressure and trying to save him. Detective Cruz and Detective Wallace is at that baseball game, and it looked like Detective Cruz is just kind of in a daze, and a pop ball come toward his way, and of course he don't catch it. So then after the game, Detective Wallace says to Cruz, I didn't know Ronnie was your CI. He basically say, well, okay, you know, he basically really don't want to talk about his situation because Wallace keeps on asking him about his case. Now Brandon is at his mother's house, and they asking about, they trying to fix the house up, getting it ready to be sold. And he says, you know, he basically need a place to stay for about a week or so. And her boyfriend, he was like, what you done gone and done now, you know? And he was like, oh, you know, you and your gal beefing. And the mother was like, after he walked off, she was like, well, I knew that wasn't gonna last no way, you know? So now he's in the room and he's unpacking his stuff, and he take the gun out of his backpack and put it up under the mattress. Now Jada is back at her job, and she's trying to get more supplies so she could go back to the house and bandage Ronnie up. So as she putting the stuff in her bag, one of her co-workers come in, and she make up an excuse why she needs so many supplies or whatever. So he tell her, you know, you need to sign your name and the patient's ID. So she was like, okay. Then it switched to Kevin. Kevin is on his way to school, and Jake is running up behind him, and he basically tell Kevin, hey, you know, my brother need his gun back. And Kevin tell him, you know, I don't have it right now. And he was like, what you mean? And Kevin said, well, you know, I'm not gonna bring it to school. And he was like, oh, okay, all right. And as they was walking on into the school, Andrea calls Kevin. He turned around and she tell them, you know, my parents is gonna be gone and I'm having a party. Why don't y'all come? And I even let you bring Papa. So they was like, oh, okay, all right. So now Q is at the chicken spot, and Alderman Martinez and Sony is having some kind of debate about who's, you know, helping the community, who's helping with bringing, you know, illegal things into the community or whatever. So Q walks through the door, and Alderman Martinez says, yeah, this is just the man I want to see. And he was like, you know, I ain't got time right now. So he asked Sony, you know, where's my tool bag? And I'm gonna need some scraps, you know, any little meat, whatever you have, I'm gonna need it. So after he go back and get his bag or whatever, and Sony asks him, you know, what are you getting into? What you getting ready to do? And Q tell him, oh, I'm going fishing. And Sony says, okay, well, when you catch something, what you gonna do with it? And Q tell him, it depends on how big it is. So now it must be after school, and now Kevin is meeting up with Brandon. And he finally meet up, and Kevin asks Brandon, well, tell Brandon, hey, I need the gun back. And he was like, what? Why? And Kevin says, you know, it's not mine. It's my boy Jake's brother's. Brandon asks him, you know, well, do he know you got it? And he was like, no, but he's nobody to mess with. And he was like, okay, well, you know, when I get it, I'll call you. You know, it's going to take me a little bit to get it. But, you know, I'll call you, and me and you could go down there together, and I'll give it back to him. After that, Kevin asks him, you know, have you asked around? And he was like, asked around about what? And he says, about if old boy dead or not. And Brandon tell him, don't ever talk about it no more. What I tell you, don't say nothing about that. And then Brandon says, you know, I'll call you when I get the piece. So now Jada got Ronnie all patched up, and she tell him, don't get shot no more. And Ronnie is basically begging her for something for the pain. And she pulls something out of her bag, and she popped one and tell him to take Tylenol. But as she was getting up to go, the grandmother called her a heifer. But then soon as she got around the corner, the grandmother basically tell her thank you. So now Kevin, Papa, Jake is at this party, and they just kind of sitting around. Nobody's doing nothing. There's no dancing. So then Papa says, this party's supposed to be fun. And then he was like, well, I guess, I got to get the party started. So he turned his little music on and he started dancing. Next thing you know, everybody gets up and they start dancing behind him. And Brandon is back at his mother's house and he's going to look for the piece. He look under the mattress and it's gone. The gun is gone. So he kind of looking and wondering like, where could it be? And he see his mother's boyfriend is in the kitchen getting ready to eat some doggone yogurt. So he goes out there and was like, you been in Cookie room? And he was like, yeah, that paint look good, don't it? And so then Brandon tell him, my personal stuff is missing. And he was like, oh, I didn't know you had any personal stuff up in here. And he was like, man, my personal stuff is missing. So then he was like, can you hand me a spoon? The boyfriend says that. And Brandon is looking at him like... So then he was like, man, he go get the spoon or whatever. He turned back around. Brandon knocked the yogurt out. And, they kind of stepped to each other. And, basically nothing happens. So Brandon is mad and he walked off and he's pissed. Because now it's like, what is he going to do? He need that gun because that's Reg's gun. And it's going to be major, major problems if Reg don't get his gun back. Now, Ronnie's grandmother is asking him, did you see anything? And he was like, no, what you mean? And she was like, you didn't see nothing? And he was like, no, only thing and she said, you didn't see no lights or anything? And he was like, no, only thing I seen was darkness. And she said, and then he said, and I smelled something. And she was like, what? Like flowers from heaven? He was like, no, bleach. It's not funny. But for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. I thought she was meaning, did he see who did it? She's more concerned about the part before you die, versus do you know who did this to you? I didn't get that part at all. I didn't get that part. Why would you? Well, I guess because she's getting older and her health is not, 100. So I guess she's trying to figure out, what happens when you pass on. I don't know. Now Jake and Kevin is meeting up with Brandon and they ask him, do you have it? And Brandon tell him no. And they like, man, what am I supposed to tell my brother? And he was like, I'll tell him. And at first Kevin was like, well, it's on me, it's my fault. And they tell Kevin, no, it ain't, we'll handle it. You just get out of here. So now Jake turns to Brandon and tell him, he's my brother. He won't kill me, but I don't know what to say about you. So Brandon was like, that's the chance I'll take. So now they headed to talk to Rick. Now it goes to Q. And Q got his bag and he got the little scraps that Sonny gave him, sorry. So then he goes and he basically cut an opening in the fence, and he feed the dog a little bit and he basically take the dog. So as he's walking across the field, it switches to Trice and Detective Wallace sitting in the car. And Detective Wallace is giving Trice some information about something that's going to be shipped, and he's just basically giving him the shipping information and telling him, you're going to have to peel off some of this, and it's going to be some cameras, so you got to watch for the cameras and everything. And next thing you know, Q walked past and Trice looks up and say, he got my bitch. And he hops out the car or whatever. He hops out the car, and Q just kind of waved at him, and he's just looking. And Detective Wallace asked him, is it a problem? And he was like, no, ain't nothing I can't handle. So now Brandon is at Reg's house, and he's basically telling Reg, you know, hey, I'm just coming, you know, your brother took something from you, and I'm just coming to tell you that, you know, he gave it to me. You know, I'm just only here because I don't want you out here looking for me. So I'm just coming to tell you, you know, I don't have it no more. And Reg is like, okay, so how you gonna fix that? So Brandon goes in his pocket. Brandon goes in his pocket and reach and gets some money out, and it's $150. And and Reg just started laughing. And he was like, no, man, keep your money. You know, you just owe me. And I like, you know, when people owe me. And then he asked him, he's like, how's your credit? Is your credit a 750? And he was like, yeah, I think it is. And he was like, okay. All right, we're gonna see. Now Jerica over her homegirl's house, and they, you know, look like they're having like a little girls' night. They drinking, and some girl is one of her friends is talking about some dude approaching her or whatever, and you can tell Jerica is not really into it. She's got a lot on her mind, and all of a sudden she tells them that, you know, Brandon had a gun and she put him out, and now they feeling all sorry for her. See, she ran her mouth too much. I feel like she shouldn't have said anything about that. You know, what goes on in your house ain't everybody's business. Yeah, these your homegirls, but sometimes your homegirls like to see you doing bad, especially if they ain't got nobody, especially if they stuff ain't doing good. Yeah, they want to see you doing just as bad as them. I'm not saying all women. I'm not saying all your homegirls. Some of them do. Some of them hate the fact that your relationship is better than theirs. I'm just saying. Leave some comments at the bottom if y'all agree with me or not, or, you know, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, misery loves company. So now Jake is at Reg's house, and Reg basically tell him, you know, you want to be a grown man? Okay, you in now, and this is for life. And Jake came across as if he was excited about that. He's excited to be basically put in. You know, he talk about, you know, Reg tell him we could always use another shooter. You know, so that kind of excited Jake, which is crazy because Jake only looked like he's about 13 maybe. And he looked like he's excited or whatever. So the girl that was massaging Reg, she basically she whispered something in Reg's ear, and then she started approaching Jake, and Jake looking like, yeah, you know. The next thing you know, she kicked him in this private area, and he goes down, and Reg gets up out the little pool, out the hot tub, and say, you cry, I'm gonna beat you twice as hard. And so then when he looked up, you know, Jake wasn't crying or anything. He was really pissed. So then Reg tell everybody else, you know, get back to the party. Now Detective Cruz is at Ronnie's grandmother's house, not beating on the door, and the grandmama answers and say he ain't here. And Detective Cruz is like, you know, I need to see Ronnie. And she say he ain't here. And so Detective Cruz just barged through the door, and he's looking all over, looking at the floor and everything, and was like, I need to help him. And the grandmother said, only thing y'all police do is help our black men go to penitentiary. That's all y'all do. So he's looking, and he's steady looking, and he comes across the blood on the wall, and he say, what is this? And she just kind of stand there, and she don't say nothing to him. So now he goes in the bedroom, and he sees the bloody shirt. And then as he turned around, grandmama got that gun. she hold that big ass gun up like, you know, you better get out my house. And Detective Cruz say, you know, you point the gun at an officer? And she say, yeah, that broke into my house. And so then he ease up and slide on out the door. And as he's walking, she got that gun right at him. I noticed one thing. Her ass was walking way better. Every other time you seen her, she was walking with that little stroller thing. Every time they showed the grandmama, it always appeared that she couldn't walk good without that little walker. Shit. She was walking real good with that gun though. I'm just saying. So the detective ended up leaving. So Ronnie's friends tell him, you need to go see Mildred, because he had that Haitian dude over here looking for you. So you better go over there and see what's going on. So Ronnie make it to Mildred's house, and Mildred asks him what you want, and he was like, you bleeding all over my floor. So he get down and he asks him, you been stabbed, a machete, a gunshot, this and that, and Ronnie says he been shot. And then Mildred asks him, well, did you handle your business? And he said, yeah. So then they walk to the kitchen, and he asked the guy that was making the peanut butter sandwiches, where the phone at. The dude goes into his pants and toss it to him. So now Ronnie has Jason's phone. Now Brandon is over his cousin's house, and his cousin is doing all this talking, and Brandon really don't want to hear him, and he asks him nicely, can we just sit and chill without talking or whatever? And then his cousin turn around and look at him and like, well, what you come over here for then if you don't want to talk? And Brandon turned to him and say, because I ain't got nowhere else to go. Yeah, while Brandon is sitting there, chilling or whatever, he's thinking about that night, the night before, when he basically beat up Ronnie. And it finally shows the whole thing. He was basically beating the sleeves off of Ronnie, got him on the ground and everything, and I guess he was just so tired, he just got up, and Kevin is standing there looking at him the whole time or whatever, and Brandon started walking away, and Kevin called him like, Brandon. He turned his back to Ronnie, and next thing you know, Ronnie grabbed Kevin, and Kevin turned around and just shot him. And then next thing you know, Brandon comes back, tell him, come on, run, let's go. So they take off running. Brandon pick up the bike, and they both running across the bridge or whatever. So that's basically how it ends. Throughout this whole episode, they just kept going back and forth about that night when Ronnie and Brandon was fighting, and the ending part just kind of showed who shot Ronnie, which it was Kevin. Yeah, this episode was pretty good. If you missed some of the other episodes, my previous episodes, just go back if you're trying to catch up, because not everybody have Showtime. If you don't have Showtime, this is the recap you need to watch. And don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up the video, leave me a comment. Let's talk about this episode or the previous episode. I see y'all in the next one. Peace.